Our sponsor for today's podcast is Lynn Junk Removal. They are a locally owned business in Northwest Ohio with competitive prices and friendly service. They currently serve Northwest Ohio and Northeast Indiana. Some services they do are demolition, moving, and junk removal. You can call or text at 419-230-8418 for an estimate or any questions. We'd like to thank Lynn Junk Removal for being a sponsor. Welcome back to the Flagrant Foul Fridays podcast. This is Nick, and with me today is Christian.
Hello, hello.
Some stuff we're going to go over today. We're going to go over some review on what happened in the championship games, talk about some more hirings and firings, as well as some transfers, get into some NFL news. There are some new updates. And then for the NBA, we got some milestone records that got broken with LeBron. And we got some more random and funny stuff following up with Nebraska's volleyball team. And our special segment today is underrated sports to watch.
Yeah, and it's also Nick's birthday today. So happy birthday, Nick.
Thank you. Did you know I could have went D1 in procrastination, but I decided I was going to wait?
Uh, I believe it.
Aging like milk.
Well, some milk is better than others. Chocolate, for example, is good.
Yeah, chocolate milk is a good milk.
Anyways, let's get into our first segment. All right, so one thing I wanted to cover this week was the Legend Bay situation. If you followed sports in the last week, you've probably heard about this, but basically this high school guy by the name of Legend Bay wanted to sign with Ohio State. However, as far as we know, his parents or maybe even his siblings to some extent want him to go to Tennessee. And because he's 17, he had to have a parent sign off on the school he committed to. So over the course of a couple days, he went from like fully committed to Ohio State to randomly signing with Tennessee. And then he posted an Instagram post saying that like his siblings have control over his Instagram account and this is going to be deleted soon. And it's like a whole situation. Now I have heard that he turns 18 in a couple weeks and he is expected to sign with Ohio State, but either way, it's really a sad situation overall because, I mean, this is his college dreams, and if he wants to sign at Ohio State, then I think he should be allowed to. And honestly, it's kind of sad that his parents don't support him in that.
Yeah, I also saw an update that his mom allegedly drove to Tennessee and forged his signature on one of the documents after she got the papers.
There also has been rumors that Tennessee is paying the mother secretly, but obviously we can't prove that. But yeah, either way, it's definitely a sad situation. Heck, even some of my professors were talking about it, and they're not even like huge sports fans. So yeah, it's just sad.
I know I mentioned this to you after we were talking about this, but do you think they will potentially go away from making parents have to sign an intent form because of this situation?
I don't see that going away because when they are under 18, there is like rules. But the reality is after they turn 18, they can like easily change their mind about these things. Like I believe the initial forms are very much like it doesn't lock you in to going to that school. So I don't see that going away, but um I do wonder if maybe they're also require like a verbal agreement from the student. I don't know. But yeah, we would definitely keep an eye on this situation.
I wonder if this situation has happened in years past, but it has never been covered like this has.
Yeah, I'm sure it has. I mean, part of the reason this is getting covered is because Legend is actually like a pretty highly recruited player, right?
Yeah, I
So,
think he's like a 4 star.
yeah. Um, yeah. So, in other signing news, Chris Henry officially signs with Ohio State. After Brian Hartline announced that he would be leaving Ohio State, he kind of questioned going to Ohio State for a bit, and there was a large scare online that he might go to Oregon or USC. But after that scare, he did officially sign with Ohio State. So that is a big pickup for us. Um, yeah. The only thing I worry is like his commitment, but I mean when you're 18, you gotta weigh your options and stuff at the end of the day. What do you think about it?
Yeah, I mean, I was unsure that he was going to sign to Ohio State. I thought he was going to try to stay in California and commit to USC like his other teammate. Um, but like you said, he's still got time to flip his commitment if he wants to. But he seems like he's dead set on Ohio State. He's been committed for 2 years. I think only time will tell. Maybe next year he transfers out from the program. I mean,
Yeah.
we don't know at this point in time.
And Ryan Day reassured him that like Brian Hartline isn't the only coach that makes our wide receiver group so good. So it'll be interesting to see how our wide receivers develop after he leaves. All right, now we're gonna move on to the championship games. So first of all, JMU beat Troy 31 to 14 to win the Sun Belt Championship.
And in the Kennesaw State game, they actually won the CUSA championship. This is something I wanted to bring up because they went 2-10 last year, and that was their first season in the FBS. And then they ended up finishing 10-3 this year. On that game-winning drive, they converted a third and 27 and a fourth and 14, and it was pretty impressive. I didn't watch the game, but I did see some highlights of their game-winning drive.
Who were they playing against?
Uh, I did not note that. I don't remember. I'll look it up while we carry on.
So number 21 Tulane defeated number 25 North Texas 34 to 21 to win the AAC championship.
They beat Jacksonville State. Number 4 Texas Tech defeated number 11 BYU 34-7, and they won the Big 12 championship.
Georgia defeated number 9 Alabama 28 to 7 to win the SEC championship.
And number 2 Indiana defeated number 1 Ohio State 13-10 to win the Big 10 championship.
And I do want to talk about this game a little bit. Um, you know, everyone online was making it out to be a huge deal, but at the end of the day, it was a 3-point game. And I know their kicker missed, but our kicker also missed. And honestly, I, our offensive line looked about as bad as I've seen all season. So I think if we clean up the blocking, I think we'll be fine. The fact that our defense only let them score 13 and they're one of the best offenses in the country, I think speaks to how good our defense is. I think if, like I said, if we just clean up some of that blocking, get our offense going, I think we'll be fine. And honestly, I would love to see a rematch in the national championship.
I did see a lot of plays where holding calls were not called, not to be like, oh, we should have won because blah, blah, blah. Yeah, Ohio State didn't have their best game, but there were a lot of holding calls that weren't called. And I did see Ohio State's kicker was getting threats and stuff on his Instagram account, which isn't cool. It's just a football game. You shouldn't really be threatening a student who is trying their best, in my opinion. I mean, it's not like he purposely missed it. I'm sure he actually tried and was nervous.
Yeah. Um, yeah, I was pretty mad at him after the game too, but that kind of stuff is not needed. And I mean, at the end of the day, we just played bad offense. Like we shouldn't have been in a position to need to kick.
I will say though, Caden Curry had a pretty good defensive game overall. He
Yeah, he
was
did.
all over the field.
Yeah. And lastly, we got unranked Duke defeating number 17 Virginia 27 to 20 in overtime to win the ACC championship. Chandler Morris threw an interception the first play of overtime to end the game. Yeah, props to Duke. You wouldn't expect them to win a game like this, but they rallied and they pulled off the upset.
Let's get into the bracket a little bit now that there's been some changes. So the top four didn't change, just a few positions changed. Indiana went up to one, Ohio State dropped down to two, Georgia State at three, and Texas Tech stayed at four. At five, we still
Georgia
got
State?
what?
You said Georgia State.
I meant to say Georgia State at three,
Oh, okay, gotcha.
and Texas Tech stayed at four. Oregon is at five still, with Ole Miss at six, Texas A&M at seven, Oklahoma at eight, Alabama at nine. 10 we got Miami, which was originally Notre Dame, but they got kicked out. 11 is Tulane, which would have been Virginia if they would have won, and number 12 was JMU, which once again that would have been Tulane if Virginia would have won.
Yeah, I don't see how you justify them not dropping. Should they have missed out on the playoffs? Maybe, maybe not. But I just don't see how you justify Alabama and Miami over Notre Dame. Like Notre Dame had a loss early in the season, and then since then they've played really good.
I do want to talk a little bit about Alabama being the first team that lost in their championship game and didn't drop any spots. I know that upset a lot of Notre Dame fans.
Yeah, I mean I sort of get it with like the head-to-head thing, but Miami has blown games since then. I don't see how you justify them as a better team.
Yeah. I mean, the reasoning they had for Notre Dame not being into the playoffs is because they believe that BYU deserved to be, or Notre Dame deserved to be above BYU, and they believe BYU deserved to be above Miami. But since BYU lost to Texas Tech, they thought Miami deserved to be above both BYU and Notre Dame because they had the head to head win over them. So I see where they come from there, but I feel like maybe Miami should be nine and Notre Dame should be 10.
I mean, on that note, we had 10 programs declining bowl invites. Now, I don't know if some of these were because of the other team declining, so they kind of had to decline. But we got Notre Dame, Iowa State, Kansas State, Florida State, Auburn, UCF, Baylor, Kansas, Rutgers, and Troy.
I mean, I know some of these teams they decided to drop out because of their team health or their coaching changes, but like for Notre Dame, I mean, theirs is I assume it's only because they didn't make the CFB playoffs. I know Iowa State and Kansas State they both got fined $500,000 each, which I feel is unfair if they don't find Notre Dame as well because Notre Dame didn't have a real kind of reason for dropping out like Kansas State and Iowa State did.
Yeah, I will say it does feel more and more like the current state of the playoffs make the bowl games and even the conference championships feel less important. Especially like when you have a game like Ohio State versus Indiana, where it's the 1 and 2 seed. If you lose a close game, you're probably just gonna flip, you know? So it really feels like there's no reason to go out there and potentially hurt your players. Um, and then the same thing goes for the bowl games. Like, what reason do they actually have to play in them? I mean, even if they make money, even if it's historically a cool event and this and that, it really just feels pointless. And so I don't exactly blame some of these teams for declining, but at the same time, it does feel kind of lame on their part because it's almost as if they're just giving up because of circumstances. And honestly, that kind of gives me a bad sort of vibe about the whole thing.
Now, do you think they could have done this to some teams could have done this to prevent injury to their NFL ready players or to like prevent their next season from being
But yeah, for
uh
sure. I mean, we've seen that in the past. We saw Ohio State do that a couple years ago, and that's when Jackson Smith and Jigba had that crazy record-breaking Rose Bowl. Um, but yeah, I don't know. I've heard the suggestion that the bowl games need to somehow be tied into the playoffs. There is the risk of making the playoffs too long, but if the bowl games could somehow be, or at least some of the bowl games could be like a play-in tournament, that could be kind of cool.
yeah, I agree. That would be interesting on how they would even make that possible.
I heard some people suggesting that like the first two or maybe first four teams just have an all-out play-in tournament in the bowl games.
I think that would be a cool thing to see them implement if they did do that.
Yeah. But I will say, for the lower ranked teams that don't get a chance to even make the playoffs, the bowl games still are meaningful to them. Like, I will admit that. So I don't want them to like outright disappear. All right. Um, we also got Illinois State knocking off number one North Dakota State after being a 22.5 point underdog. Illinois State scored a 2-point conversion with less than 1 minute left to win 29 to 28. NDSU's first home loss since September 30th, 2023, which was to South Dakota. Now, a lot of people saw this and didn't really care. Would you like to explain why this is such a big deal? Because I know a lot of people don't really know much about this conference, so that I don't think they fully understand why this is such a big deal.
Um, well, like you said, this is the FCS, so this is the little brother to the FBS. North Dakota State has been probably one of the top dogs for at least 5 years. They've been one of the best college programs down in the FCS. I know they produce some good NFL talent, and I know Trey Lance was probably one of their better quarterbacks of recent years, but he didn't pan out so well in the NFL. But Illinois State, I feel like they're more of a basketball school. Um, I've never really watched much FCS, but I know that North Dakota State, that's pretty impressive for an unranked school to actually knock them off, even with a 22 and a half point advantage.
Yeah, definitely. All right, now we're going to move on to the Heisman finalists. So Jeremiah Love of Notre Dame had 1,372 rushing yards, 18 touchdowns, and 199 carries. Fernando Mendoza of Indiana had 2,980 passing yards, 33 passing touchdowns, 6 interceptions. Diego Pavia of Vandy had 3,192 passing yards, 826 rushing yards, and 36 total touchdowns. And then Julian Sayin of Ohio State had 3,323 passing yards, 31 passing touchdowns, and 6 interceptions. Do you think a quarterback is going to win it this year, breaking that running back record on years that end in five?
Yeah, I mean, overall, it was an underwhelming quarterback year, but I still think um, even Diego Pavia had a better season than Jeremiah Love. I mean, as a quarterback, he had 800 rushing yards and over 3,000 passing yards, which is pretty impressive for a quarterback. Um,
Right.
Julian saying he had the highest amount of passing yards with a few less touchdowns than Fernando, but I still think that's a good case for him to win over
Well, he
Jeremiah
also
Love.
he also had the what was it, accuracy
Yeah, he had
or
the best accuracy.
completion percentage. Yeah, I think Fernando's probably gonna win. Um, but that doesn't necessarily make me upset. I think Julian has a good case for next year if he improves. Um, I will say, I forgot to say this earlier, it's also sad that Vandy didn't make the playoffs because they've had such an amazing year in a really tough conference.
I did see that apparently Jeremiah Love said he wouldn't accept the Heisman if he won it. But we'll talk a little bit more about the Heisman when they release it. That'll be this Saturday. Moving on to hirings and firings that happened this week. First up, we have James Madison. They're working to finalize a deal to hire the former Florida head coach Billy Napier.
And then UAB is promoting interim head coach Alec Mortensen. He beat 22 Memphis and won at Tulane as an interim coach.
Iowa State's coach Matt Campbell and Penn State finalized an 8-year deal to become the new head coach of Penn State. And Matt reportedly did not tell his team. The players found out from social media and was in shock that he was leaving the program.
Yeah, I don't know much about him, so I won't speak much on how he can um, help Penn State, but I think it's really sad that he didn't tell his players.
Yeah, it's almost like a Lane Kiffin situation all over again.
Yeah. Do you know anything about him? Do you expect him to make Penn State a powerhouse again in the Big Ten?
I mean, Iowa State's been a good team over the past couple years, so I believe he could do some big things with Penn State.
And then Virginia Tech is hiring former head coach Brent Pry as a defensive coordinator.
Florida is hiring Georgia Tech offensive coordinator Buster Faulkner.
That's a fun name. Iowa State has hired Washington State's Jimmy Rogers as their next head coach.
Blake Baker is remaining at LSU to be Lane Kiffin's defensive coordinator. He was a top target for the Tulane opening.
Nebraska has fired offensive line coach Donovan Riola, who is Dylan Riola's uncle.
Tulane is promoting their pass game coordinator Will Hall to its next head coach.
Tennessee has fired defensive coordinator Tim Banks,
Tennessee is also set to hire former Penn State and Ohio State defensive coordinator Jim Knowles.
which I wasn't a big Jim Knowles fan, so I can't say that he's necessarily gonna help the team, but that's you know good for him, I suppose. What do you did you like him at all?
I think he had a decent season at Ohio State, but was that more or less because they had a good defensive team?
Personally, I think he's one of the main reasons we didn't like go far in the playoffs those couple years because our offense was amazing when you have someone like CJ Stroud as your quarterback. However, when we would score like 40-point games, we would allow other teams to score 30 or 50, you know?
Yeah.
So, yeah. Best of luck to him though. Next, we got Kansas State's head coach Chris Kleiman. He is set to announce his retirement this week, and Texas A&M offensive coordinator and former Wildcats quarterback slash offensive coordinator Colin Klein is lined up to replace him.
Virginia Tech is hiring Penn State's Ty Howell as its next offensive coordinator.
Michigan hires Kerry Combs as a special teams coordinator. Now, again, this is not a guy that I really liked on Ohio State. However, a lot of people have pointed out that him joining Michigan kind of shows his lack of care for Ohio State. Some people said a job's a job. I'm kind of in the middle. Like, I do feel like you got to take what you can get sometimes, but at the same time, if you like truly care about the rivalry, then you probably should never work there. Um, and I believe he maybe was born and raised in Ohio as well. I could be wrong about that.
Yeah, I saw a little bit on his past the other day. So he was born and raised in Ohio. He went to school in Ohio. He went to college at Dayton, which is in Ohio. He got his first college coaching job at Cincinnati, and then he eventually went to Ohio State, and then he got a coaching job at Tennessee. Not the college, but the Tennessee Titans. So kind of odd, but for me and completely all Ohio, and then all of a sudden I'm gonna go to Michigan.
Speaking of them, they have fired head coach Sharon Moore. It has come out that he allegedly had an inappropriate relationship with a Michigan staff member. Now, I don't really know what this means, but they have said that it did not align with the school's rules. So I don't know if they have rules against like dating staff members, if it's has to do with like where the behavior took place within the campus, but all around it's a very strange situation. I know a lot of people wanted him fired after how bad he's been doing recently. So I do wonder if this is a scapegoat kind of thing. It probably isn't because they said they have evidence. Um, but yeah, it's such a strange situation. What are your thoughts on it?
I mean, I haven't heard much about it, but I also haven't heard anything about him having inappropriate relations. Um, this was kind of out of the blue for me. I didn't even expect him to get fired this year. It seems like it just blew up all at once.
I mean, I kind of had a feeling that he would get fired, but definitely not for something like this. And I actually just looked it up, and apparently he is married. So I don't even think they specified if it was like a dating relationship or anything like that. Like I guess it could have to do with like gambling maybe? Who knows?
One thing I do want to add is that all of these hiring and firings are as of Tuesday. With us recording on Wednesdays, it's kind of hard to get all the immediate news from Wednesday fit into the podcast. So, like I said, this is mainly Tuesday, a little bit of Wednesday. So, with that being said, we're moving on to the players who are planning to enter the transfer portal, starting with the Boston College's quarterback, Dylan Lonergan.
Then we have three players from Auburn. Wide receiver Perry Thompson and Horace Fields, as well as quarterback Jackson Arnold.
From Texas, we have two players. Their running back, CJ Baxter, and their backup quarterback, Trey Owens.
We got quarterback Kenny Minchie from Notre Dame,
We got West Virginia's running back, Dior Hubbard, who was their leading rusher this season.
Utah quarterback Isaac Wilson,
And Florida State's quarterback, Thomas Castellanos, intended for a waiver to go through for an extra year of eligibility, but was denied. He is currently seeking legal counsel and is preparing to file a lawsuit against the NCAA if necessary.
do you know why that was denied?
I'm not sure how many years he's played, but maybe they're trying to kind of crack down on how many years a player can play because I know they were kind of abusing that over the past couple years.
Um, I hope that we hear more about that in the future because I'm curious what the outcome of that will be.
Moving on to the NFL. So, the NFL and the NFL Players Association have agreed to a new model for selecting playing surfaces in the stadiums, one that will require teams to choose from an approved set of manufacturers and styles for both natural and synthetic fields. I kind of like this move.
I like it. I did a little research, and studies have shown that turf does increase the risk of certain types of injuries, but like overall, the total number of injuries between turf and normal field is actually not that different. My one hope of this, though, is that they base the manufacturers and styles on research, and I want the research to eliminate any sort of outside variables because I think there's a lot of personal bias. For example, a lot of players say they hate turf and they get injured more on turf, but I just want to make sure that the safety is as good as it can be based on research and science.
Another new update was added this week. The NFL notified teams today, which is Wednesday, that it will shorten the time between picks in the first round of the draft, which will ultimately make the first round go faster. The original time was 10 minutes between picks, and it's moving down to 8 minutes. And this will start in the 2026 draft in Pittsburgh, and teams were already on board with this change.
Yeah, the NFL draft overall is way too long, and especially the first round when almost every team knows who they're going to pick. I don't see any downside to this.
Yeah, I think this is a good change. It'll ultimately make the first night, I would say, probably about an hour shorter or close to it. Moving on to injuries, we got Jalen Carter on the Eagles. He's considered week to week on his shoulders. He claimed that he wants to be 100% for the playoffs. Next, we have line safety Brian Branch. He obtained a torn Achilles injury against the Cowboys in the fourth quarter. Cardinals Kyler Murray, his foot is not progressing and will not return this season, according to the head coach Jonathan Gannon. And running back Trey Benson will be out the remainder of the season with a knee injury. Colts quarterback Daniel Jones left the game with a torn Achilles injury in the first quarter against the Jaguars, and he did not return. Head coach Shane Steichen said he is out for the remainder of the season, and their backup quarterback Riley Leonard is dealing with a strained knee himself and is week to week. The Colts actually went out and signed Philip Rivers to their practice squad on Tuesday due to a trade deadline. The Commanders, their tight end Zach Ertz, he was carted off the field after a torn ACL injury against the Vikings. In my opinion, that was a pretty nasty injury. His whole leg was moving forward while his knee was moving back. Best of wishes for him. With him being in season 13, I don't think he's going to be able to make a healthy recovery. A lot of people are saying he should probably retire, which in my opinion is probably the best bet for him with his age. Jaden Daniels for the Commanders also left in the third quarter after re-injuring his left elbow. Uh, Reports have already said that he's going to be out for the game against the Giants. The Bengals defensive end Trey Hendrickson, he's set to undergo core muscle surgery and is expected to be sidelined 6 weeks, so pretty much the remainder of the season, unless the Bengals, of course, make the playoffs and they still have a chance. Chiefs left tackle Wanya Morris suffered a season-ending knee injury Sunday night versus the Texans. And to round out our injuries, the Bucks are activating Jalen McMillan and Mike Evans and will be eligible to play Thursday night.
One thing I kind of want to go back to and talk about is the Philip Rivers thing. What are your thoughts on that? Because he hasn't played since 2020, and he's a grandpa.
Uh, I don't know if he's going to be able to get the job done for him with him being out 5 seasons, and I doubt he's been conditioning at all during that time. Maybe they can get a win or two, but I don't think they'll be able to beat the Seahawks this week. I think it'll
Yeah,
probably take them a little bit of time.
you almost figure with how good the Colts did this season, they should maybe just tank the rest of this season, get a good pick, and then have good next year, you know?
With their backup quarterback coming back, he being week to week, he'll probably be back for the playoffs. I mean, maybe they think he can get the job done. Um, I don't know what their plan is if he doesn't return. If they plan on keep on playing Philip Rivers, or if they put in their tight end Tyler Warren. I know he's their other backup quarterback right now, but I guess we'll
Yeah,
see how that pans out for them.
I mean, it's an unfortunate situation either way. I heard a lot of people are very excited if Philip Rivers does play. A lot of them said they're even like more excited than they have been in a long time with any sort of trade or pickup, because they're just eager to see one last, play from people from that era of football. All right, now we're going to move on to some milestones and records. Jahmyr Gibbs scored 3 touchdowns against the Cowboys on Thursday, and he tied Barry Sanders at 47 for most in players' first 3 seasons in NFL history. He also tied Barry Sanders for most touchdowns before turning 24.
I mean, Barry Sanders is a very elite name, and for him to be able to tie records with Barry Sanders, I think it could be a good running back for the rest of the season, maybe a Hall of Fame running back potentially.
Yeah, for sure. Shadur Sanders is the first rookie this season to throw for 300 plus yards. He had 364. He also had 3 passing touchdowns, a rushing touchdown in the loss against the Titans. They failed to convert a 2-point attempt, and head coach Kevin Stefanski claims that Sanders will be a starter for the remainder of the season. So I know we talked about this last week if they're gonna end up using him or if they're gonna bring back Deshaun Watson. But it does seem like they're gonna roll with him, which honestly I can't blame him. He's been looking pretty decent.
I believe I saw something about Deshaun Watson being rolled out the rest of the season,
Ah,
but I don't remember if I did see that or not.
okay.
Um, I mean, this is pretty impressive because I mean Drake May's been having a really good season, but Shadur Sanders ended up being the first rookie to have 300 plus yards.
Yeah, there's definitely high potential with him. It's crazy that he went, what, to the sixth round?
Yeah, now he's making big game or having big games.
I heard that some teams specifically said not to get him, and I think it had something to do with his attitude in like their interviews and stuff. But he might be a steal after all. Next, we got Miles Garrett becoming the first player to record 20 plus sacks through a team's first 18 games of the season, since sacks became an official recorded stat in 1982. He needs 3 more sacks in 4 games to take the all-time record, and he averages over 1 sack a game. So, he seems like he's probably going to break that. Matthew Stafford passed Ben Roethlisberger for seventh all-time in career completions. Nico Collins makes his way to fifth in career receiving yards in Texans franchise history. And then Jackson Smith and Jigba recorded the most receiving yards in a player's first 3 seasons in franchise history for the Seahawks.
Seahawks Nick Emanwari, who is a rookie for the Seahawks, blocked the Falcons' field goal mid second quarter as well as a TFL late in the second quarter. He had an interception late in the third quarter and registered a sack mid fourth quarter. He is one of two players who have registered those stats in a game, and both were Seahawks. Nick Emanwari against the Falcons in 2025, and Leonard Williams against the Jets in 2024.
All right, I know we talked about it last week. Some of the kick return fans might have already left this podcast for good, but we're actually going to cover some this week. First of all, the Seahawks' Rashid Shaheed had a 100-yard kickoff return to open the second half. It is his first touchdown as a Seahawk and the longest touchdown in the NFL this season. The Jets' Isaiah Williams had a 78-yard punt return touchdown and had an 83-yard kick return last week, but that was not a touchdown. And then the Broncos' Marvin Mims Jr. scored a 48-yard punt return touchdown. So there you have it. If you're a kick return touchdown fanatic, we finally got the news for you.
In other news, with the Bears' loss, the Packers move up to first place in the NFC North, and that moves the Rams up to first place in the NFC standings. The Chiefs have been eliminated from winning the AFC West for the first time since 2015, but the Chiefs can still make the playoffs. According to a stat I saw earlier, they must win out, the Colts must lose at least two of their last four games, and the Chargers must lose at least three of their last four games.
That seems very unlikely.
Yeah, the Chargers have a decently easy schedule. The Chiefs have to play the Chargers and the Broncos. I believe the Chiefs are going to lose both of those games, in my opinion.
Yeah. What do you think is their downfall this year?
I haven't watched many of their games, but I do know Patrick Mahomes. He had zero touchdowns and three interceptions last game with less than 50% completion.
I know he still probably doesn't have a lot of good wide receivers, right?
Well, from what I've heard, he was pressured a lot against who'd they play? Anyways, he was pressured a lot, and I heard that led to some bad passes, and also some receivers dropping some catches were a result of the bad game. So I don't know if it has to do with their O line not being very good this season. I know they had those issues a couple years ago with that one offensive lineman getting the early jumps and nobody calling them.
Yeah, I think they've been so successful in recent years that they haven't really had the chance to pick up some good linemen and some good wide receivers, you know?
Yeah, I did see that they were consistently over the last 10 years towards the end of the draft, so they weren't able to pick up those big key names at the beginning of the draft.
It makes you wonder if Pat might consider going to a different team. I don't know when his contract ends, probably a while from now.
Think at least 4 or 5 years still yet.
Speaking of the Chiefs and Patrick Mahomes, he had a passer rating of 19.8 against Houston. A reminder, if the ball is spiked every play, he would have had 39.6. And he had the second lowest passer rating, only ahead of Shadur. So in the same year, we've gotten two of the lowest passer ratings in NFL history. It's kind of crazy.
Definitely wasn't expecting that on my 2025 NFL season.
And certainly not from one of the greatest quarterbacks of all time. Lastly, the Eagles and the Chargers combined for 6 turnovers in the second quarter, which is the most in a quarter since 2013. Jalen Hurts had a career high of 5 turnovers that game. Yeah, it was a terrible game for the Eagles. At one point, Jalen Hurts threw an interception. Um, they got the ball back, and then he fumbled it the same play. So he had 2 turnovers in one play.
Yeah, I like to watch Sports Center or ESPN or whatever post about Mike Wazowski, and actually it was Sully that was getting the interceptions on Jalen Hurts.
Might want to explain what that means.
Oh, so the NFL and Disney have had a crossover over the past few years where they they've done Toy Story. This year they did Monsters Inc. I don't remember what else they've done, but basically they took Mike Wazowski and Sully from Monsters Inc. and put them in the game for like younger crowds to watch the game, I guess. And they put them in on the key plays, on the key turnovers, key touchdowns, and stuff like that.
And Sully had what, like 4 interceptions?
Yeah, Sully had 4 interceptions in one game.
Okay, someone needs to sign him. All right, now we're gonna move on to the NBA, and we're gonna start with the injuries. There is more injuries than this, but this is what we noted for this week. Giannis has a right calf strain. He's going to be out for about 2 to 4 weeks. This comes immediately after the news that he might trade. A lot of people thought he was faking to get a trade, but it looked pretty real. Yeah, I don't know. Anyways, we also got Orlando Magic star Franz Wagner, who had a high left ankle sprain. Typically, an injury like this has a time frame of 2 to 4 weeks. Um, but he had an MRI and it showed no structural damage, so it sounds like he should be back pretty soon. Then Mavericks center Derek Lively is set to undergo season-ending right foot surgery to fix discomfort.
Last week we covered Eldon Campbell passing away, sadly, and we didn't have a cause of death, but now the cause of death was released. He died from drowning after suffering a medical emergency while fishing.
Yeah, that's a pretty sad update for that situation.
Yeah, condolences to his family and friends.
Yes, of course. And now we have a couple milestones and records from the NBA the last week. At the forefront, LeBron's 1,297 game streak with at least 10 points a game has been snapped against the Raptors. He only scored 8 points. He now has scored 5 plus points in 1,460 consecutive games, which is the longest active streak in NBA history, and that continues. Um, he has more final appearances, 10, than single digit games, which is 9, which is an absolutely crazy stat considering how many games he's played. Also, in the last play of the game, he had an unselfish pass to Rui Hachimura for the game winner for three. He had the chance to take a layup and continue this streak, although it was contested. But the fact that he made the unselfish play despite his record I think really speaks to his play style. A lot of people look at players like him, Kobe, Michael Jordan, and they think, oh, they were a ball hog that played isolation. But if you look at some of the stats, LeBron actually is kind of a pass first guy at times.
Yeah, I mean, watching that game, finding the wide open man, Rui Hachimura, I think as a dominant player as LeBron is, as Kobe was, as MJ was, those kind of dominant players kind of drag two defenders, three defenders over trying to guard them. So they got that open player. In that case, LeBron, I believe, dragged in a player to the paint because he was driving, and that opened up his teammate, and he saw that open lane for his teammate to shoot that three for the game winner. Sad to see that record go, but it shows that it's not about the record for him. It's about winning games and being a team player.
Yeah, definitely. In some ways, it kind of reminded me of the famous rebound to Ray Allen game winner, minus the rebound part. Um, to follow up on this record, the next two longest active streaks for double-digit scoring is KD with 267 and Shea Gilgeous-Alexander with 170. So, if SGA never misses a game and hits 10 plus every night, he can catch LeBron by about 2039 or 2040, which means he would have to be 41 years old and still playing, which really speaks to how impressive LeBron's health as well as skill has been for the past couple decades.
Yeah, that's a insane stat. I mean, I saw that if LeBron wanted to do it again, he'd be like 60 years old. So, I mean,
He
if
might do
it
it, honestly.
if it's gonna take a player almost 20 years to break that record, I'd say that's probably gonna be an unbreakable record or close to unbreakable.
I think LeBron might try to play with his grandkids. In other news, Jalen Johnson of the Hawks had a triple-double in the first half. This is the first in Hawks franchise history in the first half. When you think of some of the all-time great Hawk players, um, it's kind of mind-blowing to me that it hasn't happened before.
Yeah, thinking about maybe not John Stockton so much because he wasn't really a rebounding guy, but he's a big assist guy. Um, Post
On the
Malone.
Hawks?
Wait.
Wait, what? Post Malone?
I was talking about the Jazz.
I am so confused.
Oh my god.
Uh, all right, let's move on. Nick's out of his mind.
Got that.
No, I'm not cutting that. To be fair, scoring a triple double in the first half is pretty rare in general.
Carl Malone, not Post Malone.
KD
The
becomes the eighth.
Postman. Postman Carl Malone there.
Yeah. So KD became the eighth player all time to score 31,000 points, and then James Harden became a top 10 scorer all time. A little fun stat I saw the other day was comparing SGA to Wilt Chamberlain's historic 1962 season. SGA is averaging 32.8 points per game and 33.3 minutes per game. He often doesn't even play in the fourth quarter. Wilt had 40, or sorry, Wilt had 50.4 points per game and 48.5 minutes per game. That made him average 1.04 points per minute. However, SGA is averaging 0.98 points per minute this season. So that means if SGA played the same number of minutes as Wilt, he would probably average about 50 points a game, which really speaks to how dominant their team is.
Yeah, and they're even winning games without SGA on the court, so
Yeah, it's insane. Derek Queen a rookie on the Pelicans, became the fifth player in NBA history to drop a 30-point triple-double before turning 21. However, they still lost to the Spurs.
Yeah, that really speaks on how the Pelican season is going this year.
Yeah, it's been pretty bad, but I heard one of their players say in an interview that they shouldn't count them out. And they are a young team, so I think there is some truth to that. And then lastly, the Knicks eliminated the Raptors and the Magic eliminated the Heat in the NBA Cup. There are two more games tonight, which is the Lakers, Spurs, Thunder, and Suns. However, we can't cover this obviously until next week. Okay, now we're going to move on to some other sports. So to follow up on Nebraska's women's volleyball team, they are now 32 and 0. Their next game is against Kansas. One thing to note is that there have been perfect teams in the past, including Nebraska in the early 2000s. However, the last one was Penn State in 2009. So if Nebraska finishes this year undefeated, they will be the first team to do so since 2009. So we will keep you updated on that.
LSU women's basketball, their 100-point streak ends at 8, but they did score 100 plus points the next game. So they're at a one game streak again with a chance to continue the streak and possibly break their own streak.
Yeah, and the game that they didn't score 100, I believe they had like 94, 93 points, something like that.
Yeah,
So,
they had at least 90, I know that.
yeah, so they're a dominant team
I don't
no
know how
matter
much
which way you
more they're
look
going to
at
be
it.
able to continue that with them going into conference play soon,
Yeah,
playing those
that's a
higher
fair point.
SEC.
Um, but I definitely could see them going undefeated this season or something crazy like that. All right, now I want to move on to something kind of near and dear to my heart. So, you may have heard of this before because ESPN, CBS Sports, all sorts of people post about it about once a year, and that is the Silent Night game at Taylor University. So, I'll give you guys a little context behind this. So, this is the 28th annual game. It started in what, 97? I believe that's 28 years ago. And what happens is everyone dresses up in like fun costumes and stuff, and then we're all silent for the first 10 points of the game for our team. When our team scores the 10th point, we storm the court, and for the rest of the game, we're like super cheerful, we're very loud, we're, talking trash to the other players. I mean, it's all in fun, obviously. But the reason I want to bring this up is because we had the highest scoring Silent Night game in history with a score of 118 to 33. And it was also the largest scoring margin in Silent Night game history of 85. Fun fact, the last highest scoring record came from last year's team, and I believe it was like 107, and we played the same team. Me and my friends were talking about this. We kind of wish they wouldn't schedule back-to-back years of the same team because it's a little rude. I know traditionally we tend to schedule teams that we have a good shot at beating. Um, but it does kind of feel bad to just blow them out like that multiple years in a row. But nonetheless, I want to talk about some of the stats because it was a really fun game to watch. It was a week ago, so I can't recall off the top of my head, but I want to say we scored like 30 points or so before they got more than 6 points because it was like 6 to 10 when we stormed the court, and then we just went on a run of like 20 points before they scored again. Um, so our field goal percentage was 54 versus 20.8. We had 63 rebounds, 24 assists, 39 points off turnovers, 37 second chance points, 68 points in the paint, 20 fast break points, and then 88 bench points. There also was a ton of blocks and alley-oops, but I couldn't find stats on that. And I will say it had possibly some of the coolest alley-oop dunks I've seen in person. I was standing underneath one of the baskets, and there was a couple alley-oops where they posterized an opponent, and it like the crowd went crazy, and it was so cool. So yeah, that was a great night, and history is made. So I thought I'd mention it because I don't think a lot of people know about it, but it's a pretty cool tradition.
I do want to say I just got an ESPN notification, and Sharon Moore is actually being arrested and detained right now.
What? Okay, maybe it wasn't gambling. Maybe it was something bad.
He's being investigated into potential charges.
What?
It just says the city of Saline Police Department assisted in locating and detaining former University of Michigan football coach Sharon Moore. The department said in a statement released to ESPN. Mr. Moore was turned over to the Pittsfield Township Police Department for investigation into potential charges. Following a university investigation, credible evidence was found that Coach Moore engaged in an inappropriate relationship with a staff member. The conduct constitutes a clear violation of university policy, and U of M maintains zero tolerance for such behavior. Uh, yeah.
Well, yeah, that's an interesting situation, and we will definitely update you guys if we hear anything more because that is absolutely insane. Uh, where were we? I'm a little bit shocked now.
Live reactions just for you guys.
Yeah. All right. So we're gonna talk about men's college basketball. Number 11 Gonzaga blew out number 18 Kentucky 94 to 59. And then number 10 Iowa State beat number 1 Purdue by 23 points, which is tied for the worst home loss ever by an AP number 1 team. It was 81 to 58. That's yeah, that's definitely surprising. I know Purdue's one of those teams that's kind of a regular season merchant and then they kind of blow it come playoffs. But either way, that's kind of crazy. And then lastly, a little fun thing for you guys. Arizona State didn't get their starting lineup in on time against Oklahoma, so they had a technical free throw before the game even started. However, they missed it. Did you see any clips of this? Because it was really funny to me.
Yeah, I did see the clip. Kind of a waste of time since they missed the free throw.
Yeah, I don't think I've ever seen that before, where it happens before the game starts.
Yeah, I've never heard of that being a problem. Michigan State has received a $401 million donation for its athletics department. So we could be seeing a rise on Michigan State's athletics.
I do think with that being split up potentially between multiple sports, it might not actually be as much of a donation as we think. Like, I don't know if we're actually going to see the results of that much. But nonetheless, good for them. And then to follow up on last week, Inter Miami goes on to win the MLS Cup 3-1. And I believe Messi had an assist.
Congrats to Messi.
Speaking of soccer or football, if you want to call it that, the Premier League standings are very close right now. This is one of the closest tables in a long time, given how late in the season we are. So I want to point out that the number one team, Arsenal, has 33 points. Manchester City at 2 has 31, and then in third place, Aston Villa has 30 points. If you don't know, you get 3 points for winning, 1 point for tying, and 0 points for losing. So that means that they're all within one basically win of each other. And then one thing I wanted to point out also was that Aston Villa has, I believe, a 5-game win streak. It could be more, but at least from what I can see, at least a 5-game win streak. But also fourth place through 14th is a difference of 7 points from 26 to 19. And then pretty much everyone down to the bottom two teams are all pretty close, which kind of makes me wonder what the end of the year in the winter will look like. I know one of the criticisms for the Premier League format is, at least from an American perspective, is that without playoffs, it can feel like one team just dominates the regular season. early, and then there's really no reason to watch the end of it. But this year, it seems like there's going to be a race maybe through the end. Do you have any thoughts about that, Nick?
Hopefully, Wolverhampton can be a good team next year.
Well, they've been almost relegated like 3 years in a row. Um, I don't know if you know this, Nick, but being the last three teams, you get relegated to the lower division.
I didn't
So,
know. I did know that they did relegation, but I didn't know how it worked.
yeah, so they only have 2 points. They have 0 wins, 13 losses, and 2 draws. So they could be a good team next year, but they're going to be playing lower division teams. Um, yeah, their fall off has been pretty bad. They used to be pretty decent, actually. All right, now we're going to move on to our special topic for today. And I just want to say that this is maybe my favorite special topic that we've done so far. I had a lot of fun preparing for this, and I think I'm going to have a lot of fun talking about it. So, one thing to note is this isn't just like sports that we think are underrated, it's specifically sports that we think more people should watch. And we're going to talk about why. These are sports that um, we follow at least to some extent. So, I want to talk first about sumo wrestling. So, first of all, I'm going to explain some of the rules. So, in sumo wrestling, a wrestler loses if any body part other than the sole of their feet touches the ground or if they're forced outside the ring. There is no weight classes, which means smaller wrestlers have to rely on speed and technique. And then the history of it dates back to over 1500 years. It's rooted in Shinto rituals to entertain the gods, and the ring called the doyo, I think that's how it's pronounced, is treated as a sacred place. So we still see some of those ritualistic things today, like throwing salt to purify the area, stomping the ground to drive away evil spirits. Um, so yeah, it has a very um, deep-rooted cultural significance and history to it that we still kind of see to this day. Um, and at the same time, it has fairly simple rules. Like I think it can pretty much be taught to anyone in a minute or two. Um, Next, I want to talk about the ranking system. So it's organized into 6 divisions. Um, and then within those divisions, there's different ranks. So the ranks are Yokozuna, which is the grand champion, the highest rank. Ozeki, which is champion. Sekiwake, Komosubi, and then Megashira. And then there's also Juryo. And then below that is what is considered the apprentice ranks. So the main 6 ranks that I said before this are like considered the kind of higher up professionals, and then there's ranks below this as well. I probably pronounced some of those wrong, but nonetheless, um, it this ranking system is pretty interesting. So they have promotions and demotions depending on your win-loss record in a tournament, which means you can lose a high rank very quickly. All it takes is one bad tournament. Um, and then the rankings are published in something called a Banzuke, which means official chart. It splits it into the east and west sides, and the east is slightly more prestigious. So that's actually different than the NBA. Um, so I want to talk about this ranking sheet for a second. Um, it's handwritten in a special style of calligraphy, and this is done for each tournament. And then the names at the top of it, the Yokozuna and Ozeki, are written in large characters, while the lower ranks shrink in size. And they also write some of the names like sideways. It kind of like wraps around each other. If you look it up online, quite uh, it's quite a cool thing. Um, And I haven't really seen any other sport do something like this where they have sort of a ranking chart that is, directly tied to like calligraphy and interesting things like that. Also, Nick, if you have any questions or comments, go ahead and let me know.
I do like that for their history, they keep the same rituals and stuff. They don't go away from their history.
Yeah. Yeah, that's one of the coolest parts. When you watch it, you get a deep sense of like respect and not even just respect for their history, but like respect for the audience, respect for the referee, for the other, your opponents. And I think that makes it kind of unique in that sense. Um, One thing to note is that the top ranked wrestlers are treated like celebrities. They are called the Sekitori, which means salary earning wrestlers. So they earn higher salaries and they live in larger apartments or houses. They also can afford personal attendants or maids. Only about 10 to 20% of sumo wrestlers ever achieve this rank. And like I said, they can lose this rank very quickly. So the reason this matters is because if you are a top rank sumo wrestler, you can earn around 1.8 to 1.4 million yen, which is about 9,000 to $12,000 a month, which is over $100,000 a year. And that's not counting prize money, um, sponsorships, and other things like that. So you also get access to a like special silk belt. Um, So, like the high rank ones are kind of obvious at times because they have very like extravagant belts with like tassels and like bright colors. Um, Also, they also get freedom to marry and live outside of a stable. What a stable is the lower rank wrestlers live in something called a stable, which really is just kind of like a small house with like a practice ring and like a kitchen and stuff, bathrooms and all that, where multiple sumo wrestlers live. So they eat communal meals, they sleep in a dorm style room, they perform chores, uh, they eat a ton of food. Like the calories is insane how much they eat. I saw like a video on it once and it was like huge bowls of ramen that I don't think I could ever finish. But the reason they do this is because they don't really get a salary and they only get like a small allowance for basic needs. So that means that there is a major desire to be a higher rank wrestler because you get the benefits of money, the benefits of marriage, the benefits of not living in a communal house. Um, and then you're also a bit of a celebrity. Do you have any thoughts about that?
It's kind of confusing, honestly.
What's confusing about it?
Like, so do the higher wrestlers live in the stable too, or can they live wherever?
Yeah, they get to live basically in their own like private house.
How do I become a sumo wrestler?
So I think you'd have to go to a stable and then kind of apply, and then you would start practicing and everything, and then like you'd perform in smaller tournaments, and then in theory you could work your way up to the higher tournaments.
You heard it here first. Better be watching sumo. I'll be there someday.
So one thing to note is that the tournaments take place every 2 months. So there's 6 tournaments a year. Each tournament is 15 days. So there's one in January, which takes place in Tokyo, one in March in Osaka, May is also in Tokyo, July is in Nagoya, September is in Tokyo again, and then November is in Fukuoka. And I believe these locations can change year to year. So basically, every 2 months there is a 15 long day tournament. And what that means is essentially all of the wrestlers wrestle one person every day for 15 days. And I believe they try to make them wrestle people of similar rank or maybe one higher. So And I think this can change throughout the tournament. So let's say you win like 6 in a row, you might actually be playing some very high ranked people by the end of it. Um, and what this means is that you kind of get, in my opinion, something a little bit more interesting than MMA in that you're having matches every day for 15 days. So that's 15 matches for 6 different tournaments throughout the year. So that's 90 potential matches a year. Whereas MMA, you might get maybe 2 or 3 if you're lucky. Now, obviously, there is injuries, so sometimes they have to forfeit a match, and then the other guy comes out, bows, and then gets the win. But I just think that's really cool that you get so many matches throughout the year. Because that's one of my biggest things about like MMA, and I get why it's so long because you have to train and there's injuries and stuff like that. But do you have any thoughts about that?
So is sumo only uh Japanese? Because I'm noticing all those cities are in Japan.
Yeah, so because this is like the official, I guess you could kind of call this the NFL division. This is like where all these tournaments take place. But there is tournaments outside of Japan. In fact, one of the greatest sumo wrestlers of all time was from Georgia, the country, not the state. And even now there is still some foreigners in the actual Japanese division. So essentially what would happen is if you like got really good out of it, really good at sumo wrestling, you would probably move to Japan because that's where like the best of the best are. So it would be kind of like if you were really good at Canadian football, you would move to the NFL eventually. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes sense.
Um, so sumo has 82 recognized winning moves, which are called kimirate. However, only a handful are common. So here's a couple ones. So we have oshidashi, which is called frontal push out. That's when you like push your opponent out of the ring by like pushing the front of their body. That one's I think one of the most common. Then you have your yorikiri, which means frontal force out. Um, this is when you grapple a diving opponent out of the ring. And then you have uwatanage, which means overarm throw. I believe this is when you basically throw them over your body, kind of like a body slam type thing. Then we have shitatanage, which means underarm throw. It's like the underarm version of that. Then we have one of my favorites, hatakikomi, which means slap down. This is where like they're off balance, kind of falling forward, and then you push them down. So basically, they go face first into the ground. And then you have tsukitoshi, which means thrust down, and then kotanage, which is an arm lock throw. So the reason I bring this up is when you watch some of these games or some of these matches, you might hear the announcers say things like this, and I'm not like I haven't really picked up on them too much, but I think with practice you could, and it's actually interesting because there's so many ways to win that when like some of the rarer ones happen, it like the crowd really gets hype, and it's pretty fun to see the different ways that people um, find ways to win. And especially considering that since there's no weight classes, some smaller opponents might have to really come up with some crazy strategies, such as like dodging to make their opponent walk out of the ring and things like that. So here's why I think it's underrated. First of all, it's easily watchable because all of the tournaments are available on YouTube with English commentary, and they come out within a few days of it occurring. Sometimes it's like the same day, but obviously there's the time zone difference. Then another reason is that the matches can be short or long, but there's not any like long drawn out fights like MMA or boxing just for a judge's decision. I think I don't know about you, Nick, but I hate watching those sort of events just for them to go to judge's decision.
Yeah, kinda takes away from the event.
Yeah, so that doesn't really happen here. The only time that kind of happens is if there's an official referee review, but that's like when two people step out at the same time, so they have to watch a replay. That's honestly more like NFL, like watching a replay of a touchdown if they got their feet down sort of thing, than like a judge's decision. So I actually find those replays to be fun at times. Um, Then we also have, I think it's easy to find a favorite fighter because they're divided into ranks and they have different sizes and styles. They also wear different colored mawashis, which is the belt I mentioned. So, for example, when I first started watching, I found this guy that had a pink mawashi, and I really liked how he was smaller than the others, but he had very like good technique and movement. So I kind of like became a big fan of him. Then there was some other people that were like younger rookies that I really ended up liking. Yeah, like I said, I think it's really easy to like multiple people because there's the different ranks. You can kind of have a favorite for each rank and then follow them each tournament as they rise and fall. And then another reason I think it's underrated and worth watching is that upsets are pretty common actually. Um, there's some tournaments where the lower rank wrestlers can have like 8 or 10 wins in a row. Um, and that can be very exciting to follow. And then there's some tournaments where the higher ranks are like injury prone or something and they have a really bad tournament. Um, Lastly, I find that there's a level of impressiveness that you don't really get with other sports. So some of these guys can weigh between 160 to 600 pounds and be anywhere from like 5'7" to 6'8", but they're fast, they're flexible, they're strong, and like I kind of mentioned earlier, they show extreme respect for each other. Um, I've I know I've told you this, Nick, but I really think the NFL should look at sumo wrestlers because how fast and flexible some of these guys are is absolutely insane when you look at how big they are.
Yeah, they definitely have to special order those pads and helmets.
Oh yeah. But yeah, like I said, like it can be a little off-putting at first because it's like these big guys basically wearing a diaper, right? And that can be like, ew, that's kind of gross, right? They're kind of sweaty, they're big, but as you kind
Sounds
of get
fun to
in,
me.
well, yeah, hey, to each their own. But as you kind of get into it more, you you come to kind of realize like how much skill and practice they put into this and like it blows my mind away. Honestly, sometimes I wish I was bigger just so I could have a shot at becoming a sumo wrestler because I think I could actually be pretty good. Do you have anything to add, Nick?
Uh, Personally, I don't think I'd be a very good sumo wrestler. I think if I'm going up against a 600-pound guy, I'm probably going to lose within the first 5 seconds.
Well, you never know. Sometimes you can use their weight against them to make them fall because of being off balanced.
So this just in, I would not be a sumo wrestler anymore.
Have I convinced you to possibly watch future tournaments?
I think it'd be something different to watch. I mean, I don't know if I'd consistently watch it, but I definitely might look up some highlights eventually.
Yeah, so I haven't watched it in a while, but occasionally I get recommendations of the tournament in my YouTube recommendations. And like I said, it's pretty much just like 30-minute videos for 15 days every tournament. So you just watch the video of day one, you watch the video of day two, etc. And it's pretty easy to follow. If you don't want to watch every day, that's fine. If you want to jump in at the first, jump in at the middle, the last, whatever. It's just fun. Like you just put it on, you eat food or you talk to somebody else, and it's a fun time. Honestly, I wouldn't mind maybe covering the next tournament in the future, which would be January. All right. Do you want to talk about your sport now?
Yeah. So the first one I'm going to talk about is bowling, which I don't want to get too far in depth with because we do have a plan in the future to have a special guest next year. Is when we want to start special guests, and we want to make bowling kind of his segment because he he's a guy I bowl with. He's a pretty good bowler in my opinion, and so we're just gonna vaguely touch on this. But bowling is a topic that I think is underwatched, even underrated. Some people don't even view it as a sport. Um, so one reason I think it's underrated is because it's a very popular sport. Although, like I said, some might not view it that way. Some top bowlers that you may know, they're pretty well known. Kyle Troop, he's kind of the disco guy. He's got the hair pick always in his afro. Jason Belmonte, he kind of revolutionized two hand bowling. One of the most well known bowlers, probably one of the best, if not the best bowler of all time.
Now, two-hand bowling, are you like talking about the granny throw or is this something else?
This is not granny throwing. This is a little different.
Okay.
It takes a little more skill than granny throwing.
So it's kind of like regular bowling, but you have two hands on it.
Yeah.
Probably gives you a lot of curve.
Yeah, it does give you more hook on your ball. Two hand throwing. You got the one hand bowlers. You put your thumb in the ball, whereas two hand bowlers they usually just put their middle finger and index or not index finger, their ring finger into the ball. So one less finger in the ball, and you get an extra hand on it to give it that extra rotation. Um, so it could be good at times, it could be bad at times. I've tried two hand bowling. I'm better one hand bowling, but I've definitely thought about maybe making the transition at some point, just to have a little bit of excitement for when I'm by myself, just out bowling for fun.
Yeah.
Uh, Another popular name, Norm Duke. He's on the older side. I don't know if he bowls much anymore, but I've seen a lot of his highlights. Pete Weber, the guy that's pretty well known for his "Who Do You Think You Are? I Am" video.
Yeah, it's a classic.
EJ Tackett, easily one of the best bowlers right now, and Walter Ray Williams Jr. There's also some famous bowlers from other sports. I don't know if you know Mookie Betts, but he's probably the best bowler that play. He's in baseball, obviously, but he's probably one of the best bowlers from another sport, in my opinion,
He
as well
probably
as
could have
Chris
went
Paul.
professional.
Yeah, I think Mookie Betts probably could have went professional in bowling. He's probably could keep up with the professionals.
Yeah. And then Chris Paul.
Yeah, Chris Paul from the tournaments I've seen. I mean, I've seen a lot of Mookie Betts tournaments, and right, maybe they were Chris Paul's tournaments, but Chris Paul he was bowling 200s easily.
I think the main reason people don't watch bowling much is because it's really like hard to find on TV and there's not like a lot of advertising or sort of like post-game interviews or personalities, you know? And then another issue I think is that at a competitive level, a lot of games come down to like one or two um strikes not being strikes, you know what I mean?
Yeah, I know what you mean. I mean, some of the tournaments I've watched, uh, it came down to the wire. Some other tournaments, the guy messed up in the second or third frame. He got split or something, and it screwed up his whole game. He ended up losing that tournament. The guy moved on to the next round. It's definitely a tricky to be consistent, I would say, because you occasionally get those splits, which will ruin your game. I know over the past couple of weeks, I've been having issues with splits, ruining some of my big games.
Yeah, it can make it a little hard to watch, I think.
But I don't want to go too deep into this because, like I said, we plan on talking about it a little more later. But if you ever go bowling, like I plan on doing this weekend, here's a little tip for you new guys to the league or to bowling in general. The perfect angle to bowl a strike is 4 to 6 degrees, which is also called the pocket. So make sure you're hitting the pins at about 4 to 6 degrees instead of head on.
Which pin?
Head pin, the one in the front.
So you need to hit it 4 degrees off center?
Yes. You want to hit it at a 4 degree angle.
Really? I've seen more people hit it in between the first and second pin.
That's typically where it hits.
But that seems like more than 4 to 6 degrees.
I mean, pin action also takes into play with that too. But the best, this is just saying the best angle, the perfect angle to bowl a strike. Depends on what bowling alley you're bowling at. You can get better pin action or worse pin action. So
In
you
the
could
oil.
bowl, yeah, in the oil pattern, the ball you're using, the weight of the ball. There's so many factors that can change, but the perfect way. no matter the ball, oil pattern. Um, Unless you're bowling with like a golf ball, obviously. If you're using a bowling ball, you'll get a strike off of that perfect angle. Anyways, can't wait to talk more about bowling in a future episode.
Yeah, that'll be a fun episode for sure. All right, before we get to your second sport, we're gonna go back to me and we're talking about my last sport that I think is underrated. And that sport is really a collection of sports, if you will. It is esports. And here's why I think it's underrated. A lot of people play video games anyways, so I figure why not watch pros play it? First of all, you can learn from them, you can understand what's happening, so you can kind of appreciate small things like strategy, team composition, aim, other things like that. Uh, it's pretty easy to watch. Most of the games in tournaments are live streamed. The only downside is when matches are like at like 3 a.m. because it's overseas, but even then you can watch the video afterwards. Um, there's also a good mix of regional and international tournaments, so you get a much more diverse year of sports compared to something that's only in the US, like the NFL, for example. Um, and then there's a lot of interesting players. You get some trash talkers, you get some leaders and strategists, you get aim gods, you get funny players, you get young phenoms, rookies, old veterans coming from other games, etc. Um, there's, I think, just as much, if not more, personality in these sports as there is in other sports. And then a lot of players stream, which and make content. So to some extent, you can interact with them and watch them more than your average sports star. I think that's pretty fun and a unique part of esports. And then there's also a lot of crazy and exciting moments like clutches, aces, those sort of things. Um, and then one of the biggest things that I think makes it different from other sports is that almost every year feels pretty fresh because of balance changes, meta changes, maps, new characters, that sort of thing. It feels like every year, assuming the game updates fairly often, you can see teams that were bad in the past become good and vice versa. You can see new, unique strategies and different play styles, and I think that makes it very fun. It also has a lot of the same things that normal sports do: championships, divisions, free agents, coaching changes, off-season games, brackets, jerseys, and merch. So I think it's a lot closer to normal sports than people realize. And then it's also pretty easy to find a favorite team because, um, when I first got into esports, I found myself liking multiple teams and players very fast just from watching them play. And then after I watched him play like my favorite team, I kind of had a deeper appreciation for those other teams and players that like were the players that went off that tournament or did something crazy. And so that's like my main reasons why I think it's underrated and worth watching. So I kind of want to talk about what I watch and why. So I started watching esports with CS:GO, and that was many years ago. I didn't get into it too deeply, but that's kind of where my appreciation for esports started. And I haven't really kept up with it, but I do know there's some crazy players out there. Like I think there's a 16-year-old that's like tearing it up right now. And then also I watched Rocket League a bit when I used to play that game a lot, and that was fun too. And those were like the early days of the game, so that made it even more exciting. And then currently I watch Valorant esports. I've been following that since like 2023 and I've been following it really closely the last like year and a half. I watch a lot of like content creators talk about the meta changes, the tournaments. I watch most, if not all, the tournaments, and not just like my favorite team anymore. I watch all the teams pretty much if I can make time for it. It's really cool seeing the off-season changes and trades and stuff like that. It's really fun to watch. Um, like crazy moments happen and like young players come in and make history. Yeah, it's really just a fun time. It makes me appreciate the games that I like more, and it brings me a lot of entertainment. And I really think if you enjoy competitive video games especially, there's probably an esport of it, and I would highly recommend that you check that out. Do you have anything to add, Nick?
Yeah, I think esports is kind of an up and coming thing. I mean, I've heard a lot of more colleges implement it into a sport at their school. I know some schools are actually giving out scholarships for esports. Um, I think it's going to be a big thing within the next couple of years, possibly.
Yeah, even high schools are starting to do it now.
Yeah, I did see a couple high schools got together for their like their tournament or whatever, their championship.
Now, have you watched any esports?
Not a lot. I did watch some Rocket League esports when it was a little more popular, when
Yep.
it was like Arsenal and all those big name players were in tournaments.
Yeah, and I think, would you agree that there's not as much of a difference between them and other sports as what people think?
Um, Not a super huge difference. I mean, besides the fact that they're not more being athletic, they're kind of just using their hands with a keyboard and mouse with a controller.
Right.
Other than that, no, not really.
Yeah. And so that's something that I highly encourage people to get into if they're even remotely interested. And honestly, I would love to cover Valorant esports news because I keep up with a lot of the stuff, but I know that this podcast is probably not too, at least the audience is not too interested in that. So I will refrain.
My final sport that I think is underrated and potentially could be um, more viewed by more people is NHRA, National Hot Rod Association drag racing. Um, I don't know a whole lot about it. I do enjoy going to the events though. I took a few friends with me, including Christian, to a drag race this year in Norwalk, Ohio. We had a lot of fun. It was their Night Under Fire event. They had special jet fuel cars, and yeah. You want to talk a little bit about your experience there?
Yeah, I have watched drag racing on TV before, not like a lot. Um, and I was kind of iffy going into this because, at the end of the day, they're just driving in a straight line. But it was very fun. The They had like snowmobiles with like track tires, I guess, on them, and those things were crazy cool. They went like over 100 miles per hour, and they had jet cars, like you said, which you could feel the heat, and they had such a cool sound. It was very loud. Um, it, yeah, I mean, just like the feeling when the top fuel dragsters go off, you can feel it like in your chest. It's so much like force and horsepower and torque. Um, it's probably not for everyone, but it was a fun night, and I think if you're even remotely interested, it's worth a try. It's not that expensive, I don't think. So, yeah.
I mean, I watch a little bit here and there. I watch some highlights and stuff, but I don't follow it too closely. I mean, one of the most notable names is John Force. He's the best drag racer of all time. He had an accident. I don't remember if it was this year or if it was late last year, but he hasn't returned, and I don't think he's going to return. But so that's unfortunate. But I did get to watch him race a couple times, and I didn't really get to meet him, but I did see him in person, so that was pretty cool.
Yeah, definitely a sport that I think more people should check out. It's definitely probably better in person than watching on TV, though.
Yeah, I think I find more enjoyment in person because you can actually feel the atmosphere compared to on TV. You just watch them drive in a straight line, like you said.
And you get like crazy drunk old ladies that sit next to you, and it's funny.
Yeah, that was funny. Yeah.
All right, well, is that all you got?
Yep. I think definitely worth a watch, even in person.
Yeah. Well, that's gonna do it for this episode. I had a lot of fun talking about some of our favorite underrated sports. I hope that some of you consider checking them out in the future, and maybe if you do check them out, let us know in the comments if you were surprised or if you didn't like it, you know. And we will see you guys next episode. See ya.
Thanks for listening.